20th century Taiwan. In the late 1900s, the Qing dynasty still had control over Taiwan. But as the First Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1894, things began to change. Qing's dynasty's so-called strongest navy in Asia was destroyed by the Japanese fleets in this war. When the Japanese finally won the war in 1895, both sides tried to come to a peace agreement. Li Hongjiang, representing the Qing dynasty, was sent to Japan to try to negotiate with the Japanese. Since the Qing dynasty lost the war, Li Hongjiang was having a hard time negotiating a less damaging treaty for the Qing dynasty. So as the Treaty of Maguin was signed, one of the things the Qing dynasty gave up to Japan was the island of Taiwan. A couple days after the treaty was signed, Li Jingfang, the son of Li Hongjiang, officially signed Taiwan off to the Japanese on the sea right outside of Geelong, the northernmost city of Taiwan. But when the people of Taiwan heard about this, they did not want to be ruled by the Japanese, so they declared themselves as the Republic of Formosa. The Republic of Formosa tried to defend the island from Japanese invasion but was unsuccessful. When the Japanese launched attack on May 29, 1895, the president of the Republic of Formosa fled to mainland China, leaving behind groups of scattered militias in Taiwan. The people of Taiwan were not a match for the trained Japanese army, and by the 21st of October of the same year, the Japanese had gained control of all of Taiwan. The Japanese rule of Taiwan did not come easy. They faced many conflicts with the people of Taiwan because they were not Chinese and were considered outsiders. One of these conflicts was the Wuxi incident in 1930, where the Siadik people, one of the indigenous tribes of Taiwan, started an uprising against the Japanese. Despite early success due to the element of surprise, the Siadik people were quickly and brutally suppressed as the Japanese brought in actual armies. Although there were many conflicts when the Japanese ruled Taiwan, they did construct many modern structures for Taiwan, including dams, water treatment, and railroads. Till this day, the older generation of Taiwanese is still thankful of what the Japanese did for Taiwan. The Japanese also educated the Taiwanese people, adding more order to the once chaotic society. Overall, the 50 years Japanese rule of Taiwan could have been said to be beneficial for Taiwan, which was relatively behind in technological advances at the time. Meanwhile in China, the Chinese Civil War broke out in 1927, with Mao Zedong's Communist Party fighting against Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Party. The war was brutal and an estimated of 7.5 billion people were killed in battles. Many others were forced to leave their homes to seek shelter somewhere else. While the Chinese were fighting against themselves, the Japanese invaded China in 1937 as part of World War II, thus beginning the Second Sino-Japanese War. Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek, fearing that the Japanese would take over the whole China, decided to come to a temple truce on the 12th of December, 1936, so that they could face the common enemy. Nonetheless, even with the combination of the Communist Party with the Nationalist Party, the Chinese were not a match for the Japanese army and more Chinese lives were lost while Japan continued to take over parts of China. Meanwhile in Taiwan, Japan was drafting doctors and physicians to send to their battle frontline. Taiwanese citizen Ouyang Chenbing was one of those who were drafted by the Japanese. He had a personal clinic opened in Taiwan and was forced to close it down when he got drafted in 1939. He brought his whole family with him to Guangzhou, and became a doctor for the Japanese army there until 1948 when he came back to Taiwan due to the chaos caused by the Chinese Civil War. All young Chen children received Japanese education because they went to school at the Japanese Army School for the families of soldiers. However, on August 15, 1945, weeks after the U.S. had dropped the second atomic bomb on Japanese city Nagasaki, Japan surrendered, thus ending the Second Sino-Japanese War. One result from the Japanese loss of the Second Sino-Japanese War is the cession of Taiwan back to China. The Chinese Nationalist Party, or the KMT government, set Chen to receive Taiwan from the hands of the Japanese. In turn, the people of Taiwan warmly welcomed the Nationalist Army. They were happy and were celebrating because they were once again back into the embrace of the motherland. Meanwhile, the two parties in mainland China continued their civil war after the surrendering of Japan. Mao's Communist Party finally came out as the victors in 1950, and the KMT government was forced to retreat back to Taiwan, bringing over 2 million mainlanders with them. These mainlanders acted like they were the victors. They took whatever they want from the Taiwanese. To this, the Taiwanese people could only watch and were not able to speak out because the mainlanders had guns. Many claimed that these mainlanders were even worse than the Japanese. A common saying was that the dogs have gone, and the pigs have come. Finally, after all the tensions, a major conflict broke out. On February 27, 1947, Lin Jianmai, a cigarette seller in Taipei, had her cigarettes confiscated by a couple of anti-smuggling members, including Fu Shutong. At the time, selling cigarettes privately in Taiwan was illegal, but many Taiwanese citizens do this kind of business to make a living. Lin Jianmai got on her knees and begged Fu Shutong to give her back her cigarettes, but instead he beat her on her head with his gun until she fell unconscious. The gathering crowd began to clamor and the anti-smuggling members fired several shots into the sky in an attempt to scare off the crowd. Within all this chaos, a Taiwanese citizen was killed. On the following day, February 28th, with the use of radio, the whole Taiwan began to rebel against the KMT government. However, less than 2 weeks after the start of the uprising, Chiang Kai-shek had sent an army to Taiwan to suppress the rebellion. This army killed whomever came into their sight. This incident, known as the 228 incident, triggered the era of white terror in Taiwan, lasting from 1949 to the end of martial law in 1987. During this period of time, anyone suspected of treason was arrested. Many Taiwanese citizens disappeared mysteriously. Their family was never able to find out what had happened to them. Since the KMT government took over Taiwan from the Japanese, they have implemented martial law, prohibiting freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the freedom to form parties. Chiang Kai-shek and his son Chiang Jing-guo were essentially absolutists. They controlled most of the things going on in the country. Taiwan was kept under martial law through Chiang Kai-shek's whole life and most of Chiang Jing-guo's life. However, months before Chiang Jing-guo's death, martial law was lifted. Chen Fang-li, a Taiwanese citizen at the time, describes the difference in Taiwan's society before and after the lift of martial law. Taiwan's society changed dramatically. The change was too big. Before 1987 it was the martial law era. All thoughts and actions are set down by the ruler. There were not much creativity because of martial law. The society was relatively plain. Everything was more orderly. But as Taiwan's economy grew, along with the growing old of the rulers Chiang Kai-shek and Chiang Jing-guo, and with the death of those two, on the year of 1987 martial law was lifted. The people gained the rights to form parties, clubs, and the right to speak freely in public media. There were more freedom to do everything, but things got out of control pretty fast as people weren't able to control their sudden freedom. The purpose for everyone was to be more convenient for themselves, and so the society got more chaotic and less orderly. During the KMT government's rule, many changes were also made to improve Taiwan's economy. One notable change was the policy that allowed the tenant farmers to acquire the land they farmed on. This change shortened the gap between the rich and the poor in Taiwan by redistributing the wealth, catalyzing Taiwan's economy significantly. However, on the 21st of September, 1999, things changed. An earthquake of an estimated magnitude of 7.5 on the Richter scale shook the entire island. Many buildings all over the country collapsed, leaving families homeless. The 9/21 earthquake caused an estimated $10 billion in damage. Nonetheless, the people of Taiwan continued to stand strong. Homes were rebuilt, structures including the Taipei 101 were constructed, and as many Taiwanese citizens say, "As long as we band together, we will stay strong."